Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a stack of documents today that, quite frankly, I think is going to force a lot of people to feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely uncomfortable,
Oh,
but in a good way, I think.
right, in a really necessary way. Because for you listening, if you work in this space, we aren't looking at a white paper from some high-priced consulting firm today, and we aren't reviewing a keynote speech from a CEO.
No, we are looking at a Reddit thread, which, honestly, this might be more valuable than the last 5 white papers we've read combined.
I completely agree. The analysis we're covering today focuses on this specific discussion on the Alzheimer's subreddit. And the source material describes this as the million-dollar question.
I love that framing because usually when we talk about industry insights in senior living, we're talking about, occupancy rates, margins, labor stats.
It's very sterile.
Exactly. It's sterile. But this source argues that if you are in operations or marketing or sales, this single anonymous internet thread is the holy grail. It's the raw data you literally cannot get in a focus group.
Because focus groups are polite, people want to look good in front of the clipboard, right? Surveys are structured to get very specific, clean answers. But
Reddit is anonymous. It's raw.
it's the unfiltered truth. And the specific question posted by a caregiver in this thread was, and I'll just quote it here, basically, how do you help your loved one get into or agree to live in an assisted living?
It sounds so simple on the surface, doesn't it? Just how do I get them to agree?
It really does. It sounds almost logistical, like how do I get my toddler to eat peas? But as we went through the source material, it became incredibly clear that this question is actually a trap.
A massive trap.
Yeah, it's the tip of this huge emotional iceberg.
And the analysis points out a very specific word the caregiver used later in that post that acts as a giant neon sign. They asked how to do this peacefully.
Peacefully. I mean, who doesn't want that? That's the absolute dream.
Everyone wants that. That is the fundamental human instinct. You want the win-win. You want mom to realize she needs help, agree to the move, pack her bags, and thank you for finding such a lovely place with a nice garden.
Right, but the replies in this thread, the actual wisdom of the crowd from people who have been in the trenches and done this, they shatter that illusion immediately.
They really do. They
Yeah.
basically say, look, peacefully is rarely on the menu.
Which is such a hard pill to swallow, especially if you are just starting this journey as a family member.
It is. But the reality for these families is that they're almost always choosing between peaceful and safe. You rarely get both. And the source material highlights this massive disconnect between that reality and the industry. It calls it brochure theater.
Brochure theater. I actually highlighted that term 3 times in my notes. Break that down for us. What exactly does brochure theater look like?
So it's the gap between what the industry sells and what the family is actually living through. The industry sells hospitality, right? Shiny lobbies, gourmet dining, lifestyle upgrades, happy people clinking wine glasses.
It's all designed for the older adult as the primary customer.
Exactly. But the person asking that question on Reddit, they aren't looking for a lifestyle upgrade. They're looking for a life raft.
Because they are drowning.
They are completely exhausted.
Yeah.
They're scared. And they're usually dealing with a parent who is fiercely resistant to the idea of moving.
So if your website has, 20 pages about your amazing amenities and 0 pages about the trauma of moving a parent who actively hates you for doing it.
Then you are engaging in brochure theater. You're completely ignoring the actual psychological reality of your customer.
That is such a crucial distinction for everyone listening to absorb. We just assume the customer is the person moving into the bed. But in this crisis scenario, the customer is the person absorbing the trauma to get them there.
Right. And if you don't validate their reality, if you don't show that you understand that trauma, you lose them before they even pick up the phone.
So our mission today is to dismantle that theater. We're going to walk through the 6 specific patterns that emerge when the conversation fails. And I want to warn you, listening to this, some of this is going to be uncomfortable. It involves deception, guilt, and what the source calls moral injury.
It's really heavy stuff. But if you want to actually help these families, or if you happen to be one of these families yourself, you have to look it in the eye.
Let's jump into it. The first pattern identified in the research, they call it the done deal.
Yeah, this is the blunt force approach. The top advice from the Reddit thread wasn't about persuasion techniques or slick sales scripts. It was simply stop asking and start telling.
One commenter said explicitly it wasn't optional, it had to happen.
And that shifts the dynamic entirely. You aren't a salesperson anymore as the adult child. You're an enforcer.
which comes with a terrible
The
cost.
huge cost. The caregiver becomes the villain. They have to accept that to save their parent's life, they have to destroy the relationship, at least temporarily. They have to willingly be the bad guy.
And this is where the industry gets it so wrong, isn't it? We spend so much time trying to sell to the senior, trying to figure out how to make them happy. But in a done deal scenario, that's totally irrelevant.
Right, because the senior isn't buying. They aren't the customer anymore. They are the patient. The caregiver is the one buying. And what they are buying is absolution.
Wow. Buying absolution.
They need the community to support them in being the villain.
Yeah.
They need an operator who looks at them and says, I know you feel like a monster right now, but you are saving her life. We've got this.
That is a massive pivot in sales strategy. You aren't selling a resort anymore. You're selling support for the bad guy. You're basically saying, we will help you carry this guilt.
Precisely. And that leads right into pattern 2, which creates a lot of friction with traditional marketing. It's called hotel framing.
This one really stood out to me because every brochure I've ever seen, every website says welcome home. It's just like home, home sweet home. But the source material says that the word home is actually a trigger.
It's a huge trigger. Think about the psychology of a person with dementia or severe cognitive decline.
Oh.
Home is their identity. Home is their independence. It's where they raise their kids.
Right.
So if you tell them this is your new home, you are effectively telling them your old life is over. You're never going back. And that induces immediate panic.
So telling them the truth that they are moving permanently actually causes the exact behavioral issues everyone is trying to avoid.
Exactly. So what's the alternative? The families on Reddit found that lying, or framing it differently, was vastly more effective. They tell the parent it's a hotel.
Yeah.
Or a short-term rehab stay.
Or a vacation while the house is being fumigated or painted.
Yes, because a hotel implies you're being served, not locked away. And crucially, it implies that it's temporary.
It lowers the temperature of the
Yeah.
whole situation. The source analysis calls language a stabilizer. The wrong word, like home, is a loaded weapon. The right word, like hotel, is a sedative.
But imagine being a marketing director listening to this. You've spent thousands of dollars branding your community as home. And now you're being told that your actual customers are selling it to their parents as a hotel just to get them in the door.
It's completely counterintuitive.
It is, but it works. And that's the central theme here. What works versus what looks good on a glossy brochure. If you insist on forcing that welcome home narrative on a family that is desperately using the hotel narrative to survive the day, you are actively sabotaging them.
You're blowing their cover.
You really are. You're making their hardest day even harder.
Let's move to pattern 3. This is one I think we've all seen in some form, even way outside of senior living. Third-party authority.
The prophet in his own land syndrome. You tell your mom she can't drive anymore and she screams at you. The doctor tells her she can't drive and she quietly hands over the keys.
Why does that happen? Is it just pure stubbornness?
It's the deeply ingrained dynamic of the child-parent relationship. Parents are wired to parent. They aren't wired to take orders from their kids. To them, it feels like a completely unnatural reversal of the natural order.
So when the family burns out their own influence, they need to borrow some credibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They need an authority pathway. They need a white coat. They need a social worker.
Right.
Or a priest. The Reddit thread was just full of people saying, I stopped arguing and just said, the doctor says you can't live alone anymore.
It externalizes the bad guy role.
Yes. It takes the target off the daughter's back and puts it on a professional who isn't emotionally devastated by being yelled at.
So practically speaking, for our listeners in the industry, this means your sales process cannot just be come take a tour.
No, absolutely not. You need to provide an authority toolkit. Don't just sit around waiting for the daughter to convince her dad. Give her a template letter she can hand to the primary care doctor. Give her a checklist for the hospital social worker.
You need to arm the caregiver with external authority because her internal authority is completely gone.
You are essentially acting as the campaign manager for their family crisis, handing them the weapons they need to win the argument.
Campaign manager? That's a great way to put it. Now, pattern 4. This is where we get into the pure logistics and honestly, where it starts to feel a little uncomfortable, deceptive even. Pre-placement logistics.
This is the stuff nobody wants to talk about at industry conferences because it feels sneaky. But how do you actually physically move someone who refuses to move?
Right. The advice in the source material was surprisingly tactical. It wasn't about validating feelings. It was about moving furniture.
Very tactical. Things like Move the furniture while they are at a doctor's appointment. Don't let them see the packing boxes, ever. Replace their favorite chair in the living room with a generic one so they don't notice the good one is gone.
It feels like planning a heist.
It is a heist, but again, look at the motivation. The motivation is safety. If Dad sees the boxes, he panics. He gets agitated. Maybe his blood pressure spikes. Maybe he falls. Maybe he wanders out the front door into traffic.
The deception is literally a tool for safety.
Yes. And the argument here is that operators need to deeply understand this heist dynamic. If you are guiding a family through a move and you're treating it like this joyful downsizing event, like, oh, let's look at the floor plan and pick out where the sofa goes, you're failing them.
You need to be offering advice on how to execute the stealth move. You need to say, hey, lots of families find it much easier to move the bed while Dad is out to lunch. We can coordinate that for you.
Exactly. Which brings us to the emotional core of this entire discussion, pattern 5, white lies and moral injury.
This is the pattern that really lingers. The source highlighted comments like, he never realized he was moving, and then this crushing follow-up. Does abandoning him there without explanation haunt me? Without a doubt.
That right there is moral injury.
Let's define that clearly, because I think that term is absolutely crucial for understanding the caregiver's headspace.
Moral injury is the psychological distress that comes from an action or witnessing an action that violates your own deeply held moral or ethical code. These caregivers value honesty. They love their parents. They desperately want to be good children. But to keep their parents safe from a fire or a fall or wandering, they have to systematically lie to them. They have to, quote-unquote, abandon them in a strange place. That creates a deep spiritual wound.
They are saving the body, but feeling like they are entirely betraying the soul.
That's beautifully put, yes. And this is the biggest missed opportunity for the senior living industry. If your sales and marketing process is all sunshine and rainbows, where does that caregiver go with their crippling guilt? They feel totally alone. They feel like monsters.
So a community that actually acknowledges this
builds massive, unbreakable trust. Imagine a brochure or a web page that just straight up says, if you had to tell a white lie to get your loved one here today, you are not a monster. You are a protector. We understand the cost, and we will help you hold that truth.
That validation would be incredibly powerful. It's almost like therapy. It's giving them permission to finally forgive themselves.
It is. It's looking them in the eye and telling them, we see the terrible price you paid to get here, and we honor it.
Finally, pattern 6, the trigger event.
This is the reality check for the whole planner mentality. The industry loves the idea of the sales funnel. Awareness, consideration, decision. It's this nice, neat, linear path. You nurture the lead for 6 months, they take 3 tours, they sign a lease.
But reality is messy.
Reality is a cliff, not a funnel. Most of these moves happen because of a sudden crash. A bad fall, a broken hip, a car accident, a pot left on the stove that started a kitchen fire.
So the ideal journey of touring 3 places and making a pros and cons list over coffee is a complete myth for a huge segment of the market.
It's a fantasy. And if your systems are only built for the planner, if you require 48 hours to schedule a nursing assessment, or if your sales team doesn't answer the phone on a Sunday afternoon, or if your inquiry form demands 20 fields of information, you are failing the crisis customer.
You need a specific operational lane for the trigger event. Fast answers, crystal clear steps, immediate admission capabilities.
Is it?
Okay, so we've mapped out the terrain here. We have the brochure theater on one side, the happy, planned, honest transition, and this raw, painful, deceptive reality on the other. Now, I want to talk about what to actually do about it. The source material introduces a concept called AEO. I know SEO, search engine optimization, but what is AEO?
Ask engine optimization.
Well, explain that. How is it different from traditional SEO?
It's about shifting your entire digital strategy from targeting keywords to answering real questions. When people are in this crisis mode, when they're dealing with moral injury and trigger events at 2 in the morning, they aren't typing luxury assisted living with pool near me into Google.
What are they typing?
They are typing their darkest fears into the search bar. Things like, is it wrong to lie to my mom about moving?
Fair.
Or how to get power of attorney when parent refuses? Or what is the least traumatic way to move someone to memory care?
They are looking for permission. They are looking for a script.
They are looking for someone, anyone, to tell them they aren't crazy and they aren't evil. And the source argues that communities need to stop publishing these generic, fluffy blog posts about the 5 benefits of socialization and start publishing what it calls hard pages.
Hard pages. That sounds serious. Give me an example of what a hard page looks like.
A hard page answers the scary question without dodging it, without corporate speak. For example, a page simply titled, What to Do When They Refuse.
And what would the content of that page actually say?
It would explain anosognosia. That's the clinical condition where a person's brain is physically, literally unable to recognize their own impairment. It validates that mom isn't just being difficult or stubborn, her insight hardware is broken.
And that one piece of clinical knowledge changes everything for a caregiver. It shifts the blame from the person to the disease.
It turns anger into empathy overnight. Another hard page example. Who can help? Not a generic list of community resources, but a specific strategy guide. Ask your doctor to write this letter. Here's a PDF template you can download.
Yeah.
Ask your priest to have this specific conversation.
Or the big one we talked about earlier. You are not a monster.
Yes, a whole page dedicated to the ethics of white lies in dementia care. If a community put that in writing saying, here is why therapeutic lying is sometimes the absolute kindest choice, they would win the loyalty of that family forever.
Because they are the only ones telling the truth about the lie.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
paradoxical, but it works.
By talking about the dark stuff, you become the beacon of light.
In a storm, you don't look for a party boat. You look for a lighthouse. The hard pages of the lighthouse. They signal safety, competence, and reality in the middle of absolute chaos.
So let's get really tactical for the listeners who run these buildings, who market them, who sell them. If you are a leader in this industry, a marketing